Hi there, I'm Dave with AmericaAgainstHollywood.com and specifically Dave's Happy Hour. And we are here today to talk about how our freedoms are being taken away from us. And it's perfect timing with the 4th of July coming up. And I'd like to introduce my co-host.
Hi, I'm Christy Orders, and I'm with also on AmericaAgainstHollywood.com. And my podcast is called Clearing the Smoke. So please subscribe on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter.
Let's not forget YouTube.
YouTube.
The more you share with our content with your friends and family and people you don't even agree with, the more popular we'll be, and we'll get out the message that we want to get to our audience here. Thank you for joining us today. We would like to introduce a special guest that we have today, and actually his name is Steve Daniels, and he's the lead campaign strategist for Daniel McCarthy's campaign, who is running for Senate against Martha McSally. And he's here to help tell us a little bit about why we should vote for Daniel McCarthy over Martha McSally in the primary. I've looked at the sheet here and there's a lot of good content, but I'll let him elaborate. But my first question to you would be, what is the biggest glaring point that differentiates Daniel from Martha McSally in the campaign?
It's a good question, Dave, and thanks for having me. As Dave mentioned, Daniel McCarthy for U.S. Senate. You can go to demanddaniel.com. To answer your question, as far as the most glaring, obvious difference to me is he follows the Constitution. He's a constitutional conservative. We don't feel that Martha McSally's voting record adheres to the Constitution. She's been weak on numerous issues, mainly the Second Amendment, as far as her wanting to actually put forth red flag gun laws. And that's a huge infringement on our rights and something that Daniel McCarthy does not bend on.
Definitely. I think you bring up a good point, with the 4th of July coming up and, going down some of the constitutional aspects that are just being taken away from us, like on a daily basis. The main one is freedom of speech. We're separating that on campuses. There's segregated areas now for conservatives and liberals where people can't speak because they're afraid they're going to shame some sort of snowflake.
It might be a microaggression.
Exactly, exactly. And but I think the big one that's coming up right now is besides the Second Amendment. You bring up a good point with that, because we're seeing now more than ever with all the rioting going on, gun sales are skyrocketing through the roof. And people were laughing years ago. They're like, why do you need a gun, an AK-47 to shoot a deer? That's not the point of the Constitution. The point of the Constitution is to protect yourself from the government, and not to be a conspiracy theorist or anything, or a Waco wacko. But basically, the reason the United States has succeeded is because we have the right to have guns. Look at Venezuela, for example. They, when Maduro and Chavez came into power, the first thing they did was rewrite the Constitution and took away all the rights to the guns. And now people can't peacefully protest because they're being shot at, run over by tanks. Those are some of our episodes that we've featured previously on our site. But it's taking away those people. So I don't know if you can elaborate a little bit more on the Second Amendment part.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. As far as the Second Amendment, I mean, I feel like that's something that we cannot bend on. What I always say is the Second Amendment protects the First and the rest of our amendments in the Bill of Rights. If we don't have the ability to stand up against a tyrannical government, which is actually our duty as Americans, that's what a lot of people may not understand at this point, is that it's actually our duty to stand up and speak out against a tyrannical government, which we feel that we're essentially dealing with right now. We've organized some protests or rallies down at the Capitol over the last few months with the shutdowns, which we feel is an extreme overstep of government power. You've got the governor who essentially has just shut down businesses, and he hasn't applied the law equally to all. And that's the challenge, is that when you start picking and choosing which businesses are going to close?
Mhm.
How is that equal application of law?
Exactly.
Mhm.
And so the ability to protest and express our First Amendment rights are protected by the fact that we have our Second Amendment. If we didn't have that Second Amendment, it'd be very easy for the government to come in there and just completely shut us down.
Well, when it comes to weapons, I have a cousin in Georgia who always says the reason you need to have an AK-47 or whatever weapon you choose is because the government could have that. So if you have some little old school revolver and they come at you with a machine gun, that's not equal.
Yeah.
And so you need to be able to have, and that really struck a chord with me when he said that, because some people say, oh, all you need is one little simple gun. No, you need to be able to defend yourself against whatever weapons are coming at you.
Especially the thugs that are out there right now. Look at the zone in Seattle. Those people that are protecting the zone have AK-47s.
Yes.
So how am I to protect my family or my business from being looted or someone being assaulted on the street without a matching gun?
It's interesting too how the lefties usually are so anti-gun, but not those guys. They love having their guns. don't they?
That is funny. I always say if you go far enough left, you'll run into gun owners. You get to those anarchists, John Brown Gun Club. I mean, those are the Antifa types. They actually like guns, which is interesting. And to your point, in the autonomous zone, with those guys standing guard with their AR-15s or their AK-47s, whatever they have, you notice that they're not being told to stand down by the left. The left doesn't have any problem with them standing out there with their guns.
Yep.
However, if us on the right, on the conservative side, if we do that, we're domestic terrorists. We're out there, we're white supremacists or domestic terrorists with our guns, which is really hypocritical and unfortunate that that's how they try to portray us.
It kind of goes hand in hand with the next segment, which would be the face mask with Martha McSally. And you got to see this. This is great. But on the back here, there's a comparison between the two candidates. And obviously, Martha McSally's has a Arizona mask on, and it's more of a scarf. It's
muzzle.
Yeah.
We call it a muzzle.
It's actually not even a legitimate mask that fights the coronavirus. There's gaps up above and below. So it's just hypocritical, these people jumping on board telling us to wear masks.
Well, in the boxes of those paper masks, many of them actually say on the box, this will not protect you against coronavirus. I mean, can you imagine like a box of condoms saying like this isn't going to work? I'd be like, what's the point? I don't understand how if they even say it's not even going to work as you're purchasing it, what in the world? Why are we supposed to believe that these are going to work?
No, that's a good point. Actually, New England Journal of Medicine, they have I guess it's an opinion piece or an article written by a doctor, but it actually says that masks are a reactionary result to the pandemic to try to make people feel more comfortable. It's really just a piece to give people a peace of mind. However, what I feel personally is that the government's actually using it for control, just to get control. It's to see how far they can push society to get them to do what they want.
To the new normal. Now they're saying everyone will start to accept it. The comparison with seatbelts, it really sent a chill up my spine. Because the idea that, oh, don't worry, one of these days everyone's going to think it's fine and just do it automatically. I'm thinking, is that supposed to be really the new normal where everywhere we go, we're wearing a mask for the indefinite future? This is crazy.
Yep. And not only that, a good point is Asia, a lot of people have been wearing masks for years and it hasn't stopped this pandemic. And as a matter of fact, that's a hotbed of where it's at. So, these masks that are false safety, are not really working. And that is one big glaring thing with Martha McSally. When I was at the rally the other day, both her and Governor Ducey were wearing masks, and you couldn't even hear what they were saying, basically, because, they're trying to talk through the masks. And I think they need to stand up. They need to be like Donald Trump and believe what you believe in. And
well, they need to be more equal with information. I feel like there's some similarities with global warming, where there's this societal shaming, and they want to get rid of the evidence they don't like, focus on the evidence they like, and say, if you don't believe this, you're a bad person. You know, and that's very much with shaming. It's going on with mothers and
Yes.
women especially. And I find it very troubling. It's as though you're a bad person or a negligent parent if you don't believe in covering your child's face or your own face.
Yeah.
And I personally feel like healthy children at school should not be wearing masks during the school day. And that's what some of the schools are trying to do now. You're not going to be able to communicate well. You're not going to be comfortable. You're not going to breathe very well.
Mhm.
And the slim chance it's even doing anything anyway with a healthy person whose risk is so low, if they even do get the disease, I feel like cost benefit analysis here, people. This is crazy. And I don't like the shaming. And I feel like that's what's happening. And there's a lot of similarities to global warming, which is another big issue. Have you ever thought about that comparison? Does that seem like
that's interesting you bring that up. As far as education, even I'm a member of a group called Purple for Parents, and they're really a parents' rights and advocacy group for education.
wow.
So it kind of arose. It was birthed out of resistance to the Red Fred movement, which is really a big union movement, which is about getting more dollars dumped into education, but it never makes it to the classroom. It stays up in the administration level. So that group was formed. I've been very instrumental in working with that group in their leadership.
It's called Purple.
Purple for Parents. So yeah, look that up on Facebook. It's a good group. We've found that this topic is very polarizing. To your point, you've got parents being shamed if they're not masking their kids.
Mhm.
And that's unfortunate because, to your point, I don't think it's healthy for a kid to be masked, especially at school at a developmental age. There's many issues that arise out of that. I think number one is just the health cost. I don't think there's a benefit. I think there's a cost because you're trapping your exhaust. Essentially, I liken it to leaving your garage door closed and running your car. I mean, at that point, you're breathing those unhealthy fumes, and I see that as how it is wearing a mask. So I don't think they should be doing that at school. I think we're going to create a generation of hypochondriacs, of fear-ridden kids because their parents are so caught up in this pandemic. I call it a scamdemic, and I'm not.
That's a great
Yeah,
term.
plandemic is what I call it. Either way, same thing. Yeah.
I'm not saying the virus isn't real, and I'm not saying that there isn't an illness that people are dying from. I just think that it's being overplayed. I think they're using it for their agenda. Like Rahm Emanuel said, never let a good crisis go to waste.
That comes from Saul Alinsky.
Saul Alinsky.
And it has trickled down, and all the followers, never let a crisis go to waste. Control the thought process, and that's through the education movement.
Yes.
Red for
And
Ed.
speaking of education, it's interesting. I subscribe to I get the ASU Alumni Magazine, and there's actually an article where the woman says, "Never let a crisis go to waste." That's our motto here at ASU.
Wow.
And I thought, this is really scary.
It's
That was
kinda
supposed to be a back office thing to whisper.
Yeah, I didn't think
you're not
you're
supposed to be
supposed to tell
saying that's
people
what you're
that.
doing. And I thought that just added to the whole creepiness I've been
Right.
feeling with the whole thing that's been going on.
Yeah, and Dave, you brought up, over in Asia where they tend to wear a lot of masks. The control that the Chinese Communist government has over their people is pretty scary, and I believe personally that that's the end goal here. I think this is a communist insurrection that they are trying to take over our society and our government and implement communist control. That's my personal belief. I know Daniel also believes that as well. He can, I'd love to have him back sometime, and he could definitely speak to you guys a lot about
We would
China.
love to have him here.
Yeah, he's very, very well versed on the China subject and how aggressive they are at trying to infiltrate.
It's interesting, I grew up and I was able to witness Reagan as a president, and just really awesome, and got the patriotism going, but he could see the harm of socialism on the horizon, and he was so successful in tearing down the wall, helping break up Russia in the sense that letting them become more of a democracy, letting some westernized ideas come into their country. And it's reversed, and it really started under I would say George W. and then definitely under Barack Obama. He was even caught on hot mic, saying, "Wait till this election's over and I'll be
I'll have more flexibility.
Yeah, and it's like,
tell
okay,
Vladimir.
so if there's any Russia collusion, it was there.
Right.
Same thing with Hillary doing the reset button. But you brought up another good point. Is you were talking about breathing your own toxic in fumes, such as the carbon dioxide and with the mask on. But I've been taking it from the opposite angle also, which goes hand in hand with it. But you're limiting your oxygen intake.
Yes.
And I've read studies where it's like 20 to 25%, and it's like, especially here in the desert, as hot as the air is, and, people that live at higher elevations, where there's less oxygen, and you're limiting it by 20%. It's just not sustainable. Plus, you see a lot of people touching their mask because it's uncomfortable. I mean, even without a mask, they say that you touch your face up to 25 times per hour, just subconsciously. And I actually saw some interesting videos on YouTube where they put a chemical on the hand that glows in the dark, and it showed how often people touch their face and where it ended up around the room, and it's astonishing.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Well, and one of the main reasons we wanted to have you here today, Steve, is to talk about Daniel McCarthy. I love the campaign slogan, Demand Daniel McCarthy, because it'd be so easy for people to sit back and think, well, McSally's our only option. Okay. People are saying, no, we demand better than this.
Yeah.
We do. And I think that even if he seems like a long shot, or he seems like he's really fighting the system, that was Trump. Yeah. Nobody thought Trump was going to win in the beginning. I mean, that was crazy, right? He had no chance. It was, who's he thinking he can run?
I agree. I appreciate that. The demand label was really strategic, right? To your point, we've been handed, we've been told what we're going to get. At this point in America, I think we have to demand what we want and what we need. He says, demand the Constitution, demand no red flag, demand a balanced budget. Whatever the issue is, we have to start demanding that our government listens to us, because our government is only granted the powers that we give them, right? It's consent of the governed. In theory, right? So that's really where his campaign arose out of. He initially, so he was a huge supporter of Trump in 2016, helped get him elected. He was actually a campaign strategist. He donated to the campaign, so he talks about all that when you speak with him. But huge supporter, and he saw that movement, to your point, where Trump was the outsider, the anti-establishment, and that's really where he arose out of. He was trying to find someone to run against Martha McSally. Daniel did not want to do this. It's like one of those things where this is the last thing he ever wanted to do, because who wants to disrupt his life, his family life, his business, etc. As I mentioned, he's got a real estate company that's very successful.
He doesn't need to do this.
He doesn't need to do this. Yeah. He's actually not going to take the salary. He won't take the pension. So he's not doing this job for the money.
Awesome.
He went to a lot of people and said, hey, I want you to run. Hey, I want you to run. And as he kept talking to more and more people, they said, well, you do it. You do it. And so he got enough you do it's. And at that point, he decided he had to. He decided there was no other option, because nobody else was stepping up. And he knew how important it was to hold this Senate seat. You've got McSally, who, when she stepped down to run in 2018 from her congressional seat, that actually went to a Democrat. So she lost one seat there. Then in 2018, when she lost that race against Sinema, now she's lost another seat for Arizona. If she were to make it through the primary on August 4th, she would then be losing a third seat. There's no way she beats Mark Kelly. It's just not going to happen. I mean, the numbers are out there. You can see she's down roughly 13 points. She's actually dragging Trump down in Arizona. And that's really the sad part, is Donald Trump has been put in a tough position by McSally and by the governor appointing her, and by Mitch McConnell pushing him to back her, because in our estimation, he knows that she's a lost cause. However, she's the anointed, if you will, and that goes back to the McCain years and all the corruption, and the McCain machine's still alive and well in Arizona, unfortunately, and she's a remnant of that. He actually recruited her to come back from Germany to run for Congress. So there's a lot of interesting tie-ins with McCain here, and this is actually McCain's vacated seat. So it's very important that Arizona keep this seat, and the only way that we feel that's going to happen is by putting Daniel through the primary on August 4th.
And it's actually interesting. You talked about Daniel supporting Trump from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going to functions where Martha McSally was very hesitant to even utter the word Trump.
Oh, yes.
And, people, I have friends in high places, but they mentioned that they even asked her point blank, would you support Trump? And she refused. She danced around the subject. So now she's kind of on the Trump train because he's popular and he's making waves and he's doing things. But you're right. She's part of the establishment, the McCain establishment. And I laugh. Just a little story is historically Arizonans who have lived here a long time know McCain as a liberal. He is not a conservative. And she follows right in his footsteps. And, we really need a strong conservative.
I'll never forgive him for his dirty trick with Obamacare.
The thumbs down.
I think about that every time as my
and the
premium
dossier
has gone up from $650 before Obama was elected to now $2,200 a month.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I always think, thanks, McCain, every time I get my increase in the mail.
He introduced the dossier, and they all knew that it was fake, even under oath. We now see the transcripts that no evidence whatsoever.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's interesting you do bring up a few points there with the Steele dossier, right? He was instrumental in getting that introduced into quote unquote evidence, and he knew better.
Yep,
he knew better. There's no doubt he knew better.
He just didn't like Trump.
He didn't like Trump.
Well, and he did. Trump did make a big mistake making an enemy out of him. It was a foolish comment that Trump made about I only like heroes who don't get caught or don't get captured. I mean, that was in poor taste. But boy, McCain cut off his nose to spite his face with that, with the revenge. I mean, he just kept going, hating Trump so much
to his death, right? To his death, unfortunately. Even his family. I mean, clearly his family is not a fan. I mean, you see what Meghan McCain has said about Trump.
Sure.
However, on that subject, just this past week, and I don't know if you guys caught this, Meghan McCain actually came out very negative about McSally.
That's good.
She actually was tweeting about how she might be the worst politician ever. McSally will be, she'll lose a third seat for Arizona. Yeah. So this is Meghan McCain, in my estimation, Ms. Establishment, and she's out there speaking extremely negatively of McSally. So if you've lost the Meghan McCain establishment vote, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. So the writing's on the wall. I don't think anyone at this point is deep down in their gut. They know she's going to lose. I think it's just now a matter of your point, Christy, as far as getting the word out about Daniel McCarthy. There's an option on August 4th, and a lot of Republicans don't know that, and there's a lot of dirty politics being played here in Arizona. The AZ GOP has essentially blacklisted him. They will not talk about him. They won't even say his name. Now, in a primary, a lot of people don't understand this. Arizona being a primary state, when it's a contested primary, the GOP is to remain neutral. So they are not to favor one candidate or another.
Oh, really?
And they're actually supposed to support them equally. Oh. This is not happening. What is happening is they are propping up Martha McSally. I believe it was either yesterday or the day before, I got an email from alerts@azgop.gov. It was a campaign fundraising email for McSally.
I got that same
Did you
email.
get the? And it literally says the email address says Martha McSally.
Yep.
Campaign fundraiser. If you click down and look at the email address, it's alerts@azgop.gov.
Yep.
So they're literally fundraising in a primary, in a contested primary, for a candidate. That goes beyond all ethics violations, bylaws violations. It's just
how infuriating.
It's frustrating, and we're calling it out. We call out all of the violations as we see them. However, from a media perspective, he's also being blackballed as well, because the media, obviously being tied into the establishment, gets their walking orders. So it's starting to open up a little more. We're starting to get some traction here with the local media, the radio, but in general, he has been just essentially ignored by the Republican Party. The chairwoman, Kelly Ward, and Not sure about your guys' opinions on Kelly Ward.
I'm not a fan.
I was a supporter of hers. I always tell people that I was a huge supporter of hers during her Senate runs. As soon as she got into the chairwoman spot, it seems that she sold out to the establishment pretty quickly.
As people tend to do.
Unfortunately,
It's a
right?
shame.
And it's an unpaid position, but it's a position of power. And in my estimation, she's positioning herself for some type of role, whether that's in the administration or whether that's maybe a congressional seat. I think she's positioning, and in order to do that, she has to take her marching orders from the establishment.
Exactly, and I did vote for her when she was the primary for the Senate, and I don't have regrets because I believe that we still need to swing into the conservative direction.
Sure.
But she was hesitant on Trump as well. And, I'm sorry, but you're a part of the establishment. If you're trying to vote all the same regulars in, like the McCains and Mitt Romney and all these people that think they're in
please
line
don't mention
next.
him.
And I'm so glad that Trump came in because we're no longer the party that we're getting whoever deserved it next in line. Same thing with Biden and Hillary. Like, they keep putting forward the people that they think are next in line. And it's like, you got to learn, you got to get someone in there that's going to change.
Well, and that's why Trump was so refreshing. The great, the bull in China cabinet, so to speak. I mean,
Yes.
He came in and he scared the Republicans too. A lot of people did like that status quo. There were plenty of Republicans who would have been fine with Hillary being president as long as everything went along. They kept getting their money and their nice cushy thing, and they could complain and do their thing. And he was such a disruptor.
Yes.
And I think that's what so many Americans are ready for now. This system is so ingrained and so corrupt, and so it's not looking out for us at all. It's just looking out for the status quo. And I love the idea of an upstart who wants to come, especially here in Arizona, because we need it. It's very scary how purple and blue now we're becoming. People are fleeing California and forgetting why they fled.
And I'm impressed that he seems, anyways, off of first glance, that he's a true constitutionalist. And I love that because we need to get back to that. We need to remind our audience and all of America that we are actually the people that run this country, not the politicians. It's for the people. It's not for the politicians. So, they need to stop hiding these bills and passing them at midnight on Christmas Eve and not reading it and voting on it. And honestly, we need to get educated people in there. I know we need representation from all walks of life, but we need people to at least understand what the Constitution is and swear by it, not just swear by it when they get nominated and then not follow it. We can't hide things behind closed doors like the Democrats did with the impeachment hearings and Jerry Nadler and all Adam Schiff. We need to get people in there that are constitutionalists.
Yeah, to your point, he's kind of the anti-politician, if you will. So kind of along the lines of Trump, which, to your point, a lot of the anti-Trump segment of the GOP is still there. Oh, yes. They're just a lot quieter because he's popular, right?
Yep.
And McSally does fall in the anti-Trump box. To your point earlier, she's on interview. She's on video basically saying she won't say if she's going to support him.
Yep.
She wouldn't even say if she voted for him.
Yeah.
So at this point, I've never trusted her. I mean, regardless of anything else, she comes off as untrustworthy. And Daniel, being a constitutionalist, to your point, he'll sit there and, I mean, he can have a conversation back and forth just about, the Constitution all day. And for me, the litmus test of any politician or any legislation should be, is this constitutionally sound? We've gotten so far from that, it's not even, our government's not even recognizable at this point. The 17th Amendment is interesting. 17th Amendment, before that was enacted, our senators were actually elected by our state legislature. Not sure if you guys knew that. When they enacted the 17th Amendment, that's when they started going to a vote. So that's where things kind of got sideways when it comes to the senators, because before they were voted on and they were elected by the state legislature, they were accountable more to their state. and they had to come back and report to the legislature and have interaction there. And what was important to the state was brought to Washington. Now all this outside money gets dumped into these races,
Yep.
and they've got all this lobbyist money and this corporate money that comes into these races from out of state. The fact that, and that's a side issue, but campaign finance, the fact that candidates are allowed to take money from outside their state, that makes no sense to me.
No.
Why should money from outside your state be influencing your state elections?
Well, especially people like George Soros.
Outside your country.
Yeah.
Outside country, yeah. I mean, that's how we got Sheriff Pennzown.
Yeah, exactly.
$2 million in Soros money is what got us our Maricopa
Did
County
Soros
Sheriff.
help him? Soros help
$2
him?
million.
Yeah.
Oh,
And it's
that's
interesting,
terrible to
to
hear. I didn't know
have
that.
someone from. I believe he's a citizen now, but from a foreign influence, he helped the Nazis supposedly.
Oh, he did.
That's what we've heard.
I don't personally have any documentation on that, but regardless if he helped them or not, he stood down and he did not voice his opposition to it. And we see now that he's pushing everything that's a socialist agenda. And his money should not be pouring into our state to who we choose to represent
No way.
us.
That's correct.
But it's very scary. He has unlimited money, and he's a very hateful, evil man.
Mhm.
And he wants a one world government. He wants everyone to follow the rules and be quiet this whole thing with this COVID thing. My antenna went off pretty early about how weird this whole thing was.
Same here.
And how quickly everybody just said, okay, I'll shut down my business.
Yeah.
I'll stay home, stay safe, And
Well,
it just seemed really
I saw
weird
some
to me.
revised numbers today that they believe from the CDC and the WHO that they now believe, more importantly, the WHO, because at first they were telling us the death rate was going to be 3.4%, and now it's down to 0.03%. And it was purposely done to wreck our economy, in my opinion.
Yes.
I see there's a China influence behind it. I see there's a liberal socialist influence in America.
Mhm.
But the bottom line, whether you agree with it or the lockdowns and the masks and everything or not, is more importantly, the rest of the country, the 98% that is trying to earn a living, feed their table, put food on their table for their family, and also pay their bills. People live paycheck to paycheck. A lot of people are in major credit card and mortgage debt, and now they can't even pay that. We've shut down the whole country. So I'm glad to see a candidate, that's anti-mask and,
Well, it gets the word out too. We need more people standing up and saying, everyone's afraid. I want someone to stand up and say, let's look at the real risks of this disease. It's like you're a pariah if you even say that. If you were to say
let's
that.
do facts.
Well, in the initial study, that paper that said 3 to 4% was, I can't remember the guy's name. I want to say his name was Ferguson. He was a British guy, and he was friends with Bill. He was on the Gates board, and his other research had proven faulty in the past. We went just running on that. We're just going to shut everything down. I mean, when have we ever kept healthy people at home? Never.
Yeah, exactly.
And we've never shut down our economy over worse things like this, like the Spanish flu or something like that. And this whole thing, the Bill Gates and the George Soros and the Fauci there's all this weird interconnection, and something just doesn't seem right. But then if you dare fight it, you're
a science denier, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, exactly. That's the same thing.
So
Goes to that same
same with
shaming.
the global warming. They call you a science denier.
Sit down, shut up. We told you what you're supposed to believe. Next.
I actually have an interesting story from yesterday when I was in the grocery store, and the cashier actually had the mask down below the nose but over the mouth. And it's interesting because I've been laughing. A lot of people, especially the liberal side, politicians, and everybody's shaming people for not wearing their mask. Well, when they do wear the mask, it doesn't seem like they're wearing them correctly. I see them up on their head. I see them underneath their chin. I see them hanging off of one ear. What good does this all do? But having friends in the medical industry, and I'll lead into that real quick, is it doesn't stop. The pores in these masks are wider than what the virus itself is. So it's still escaping through. And people don't realize that unless you have the N95 mask, I believe is the official title. But when I was standing in line, customer actually started berating the cashier, and it's like, what good is this? And the cashier actually spoke up and was knowledgeable about why she was doing it. She said, I'm sorry, but masks are made for preventing my droplets from reaching you. And she goes, so if I'm speaking, it's over the mouth part. The mask over my nose is not helping me uh, prevent from those droplets coming in. So it's not impacting you at all. And there was actually a doctor in line, and he had his mask off, and I didn't know he was a doctor until he spoke up, but he said, 100% I agree. And he talked to, he said, the masks are doing nothing. It's a misnomer. And he goes, it's basically, you want to put a mask on someone who is high risk category, someone who's elderly, someone who's diabetic or a heart, or just recently got out of a surgery, maybe a cancer patient. Those are the people that need the masks, not the rest of us. But I would like to get back into talking about Daniel, and I'd like to see if you could do a comparison to help our viewers understand what the difference is between him and McSally. And I know we have we're under the gun because the primary ballots start coming out next week, I believe.
July 8th. Yeah.
For the mail-in ballots, and then we actually go in August to the polls themselves for those
Correct.
who are not on the ballots.
Yeah, so the primary is on August 4th. However, the ballots do go out July 8th, and the bulk of the voting does take place by the mail-in ballot. So it's very important that we get the word out there quickly, and that people know that there is a better option, that there is an option at all, because they're not being told, as we've discussed. So one of the main issues is right now the hot topic's the COVID-19, right? On that topic, he is very strong. He says we need to leave businesses open. We need to approach it from a pro-liberty standpoint, where people need to take care of themselves. That's what our country was founded on. It's not that we're trying to harm anyone, but we need to be responsible for our own safety. Versus McSally, who says that we need to social distance until there's a vaccine. So to me, saying that we have to wait until there's a vaccine to return to normal is insane. I mean, to me, that's just insane. And to think that we can just maintain this status quo until there's a vaccine just doesn't make sense. And then, one of the other issues that a lot of people feel very strongly about is abortion. I mean, it's a real polarizing topic, but one that's very important that we feel. And Daniel's very strong on that. He's pro-life at conception. He does not bend on that. Versus McSally, which she voted for to fund Planned Parenthood and Obama priorities back in 2015 when she was in Congress. In addition, she's up to, I think recently she's been quoted as saying anywhere up to 24 weeks is acceptable.
And I just to add to that real quick is whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, some people believe there are cases that are legitimate. I don't want to step on a woman's rights, but I do believe that when you're aborting 50% of those babies are women. So what about their rights?
Yeah.
But you bring up a good point. The biggest thing I'm against McSally for is funding Planned Parenthood. They're just a known meat factory, and but they've done nothing but harm, especially to minorities. That's the reason that it was instituted.
Yeah.
So if she's truly not a racist, she should not be supporting Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, to your point, when Planned Parenthood was really founded by Margaret Sanger.
Yep.
Right. And she was a eugenicist,
Yep.
and she wanted to depopulate the minority communities.
And it worked.
And it worked. And that's why we see a lot of Planned Parenthood offices or clinics in minority heavy neighborhoods.
Poverty-stricken and minority areas.
Yes. So that's a very unfortunate thing.
And I don't like the way they pressure the woman. It's almost as though they act as though we provide this service for desperate people, but they actually try to convince people who are even on the fence. I'd like to think that there is some element of trying to get the people who come in to say, give this a chance. You have this baby, you could always give it up for adoption. There's options, that you really at your heart would like the person to not have to have the abortion. It's kind of like amputating someone's leg. Like that's a last ditch thing. I really don't want you let's try to save your leg. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, no, we just want to chop it off. Who cares?
We feel like there's an agenda there, right?
Yeah.
And we know that there's a lot of money. Anytime, I always say follow the money. Anytime there's money involved, there's a lot of times corruption involved.
Oh, sure.
And we've seen from the body parts harvesting and the
Exactly.
sales of body parts for testing and whatnot. So it's pretty sick to me. I mean, it's inexcusable what they've done. One of the other things is education that we kind of touched on earlier. Daniel really wants to bring control back to the states. The federal Department of Education has been a problem. That's why,
especially with the unions.
With the unions, I mean, it's just the control, the money again goes back to the money again and control. So he really wants to bring that back local and get the federal government out of education. I think that's a big topic these days and very, very pertinent when it comes to all the COVID restrictions that they're placing.
Have a view on school choice?
Very strong on school choice.
Good.
So as I mentioned, Purple for Parents actually endorses him. And we're very strong. When I say we, I'm a part of the leadership of Purple for Parents, and we're very, very strong on school choice, ESA, which is Empowerment Scholarship Accounts, which helps parents take the money that they're paying in tax dollars and taking that money and allocating it where they see best fit for their child.
And is he paying attention to things, or is Purple for Parents paying attention to things like this 1619 project and some of this really left-wing propaganda that's now being instituted in curriculums all around the country? That's very troubling to me.
Yeah, and that again goes back to the federal control over education. Even locally, though, we've got some different programs in some of the schools that have got down in Chandler and Kyrene, for example, called Deep Equity, which is a diversity and inclusion curriculum, if you will. I call it a curriculum very loosely. Essentially what it is propaganda to try to push equality, and they're looking for equal outcomes, which to me is not realistic. I always say you have an equal opportunity. Every American has the same opportunity to succeed. It's what you do with that opportunity. To try to guarantee equal outcomes is essentially socialism or communism. And it's just not realistic. But that's the type of things that are pushing in our school districts. As I mentioned, I'm very passionate about education. I'm actually running for school board in Paradise Valley Unified School District.
Oh, I used to teach in that district.
Oh, did you?
I taught at Horizon, yes.
So working on still getting on the ballot, getting the signatures and whatnot. But
is that election coming up at the same time?
So that's actually at the general election. Yeah, there's
okay.
No primaries. It's a nonpartisan position, but
right.
If I'm on the ballot, hopefully everyone will vote for me. Steve Daniels.
Definitely. Do you have a website specifically for you?
I don't, but I'll be on
Facebook.
So I'm on Facebook. You can find me on Facebook, Steve Daniels. But definitely go on to Purple for Parents, and you'll see more information there.
Great.
But yeah, so going back to Daniel, as far as education goes, he's very strong on parents' rights. I mean, it really comes down to the parent being able to choose what they feel is best for their child.
Definitely. So there's a couple of categories that I'm interested in where Daniel stands as a candidate, and maybe you can elaborate. But the first one would be government spending, and then if you could head into a very important issue, border security right now.
Yeah, those are good questions, Dave. So as far as government spending, Daniel said that he'll never vote to pass an unbalanced bill. So let me rephrase that. Daniel said that he'll never vote to pass a budget bill that is not balanced. Whereas you've got Martha McSally, she's essentially a rubber stamp for Mitch McConnell. Whatever budget gets placed in front of her, she's been voting on it. So we feel that there needs to be more responsibility at the federal level. And as far as border wall and border security, that's a huge topic for us being a border state, right? Daniel's very strong on that topic. He believes that without a secure border, we don't have a secure country and or state. So he recognizes the need for an extremely strong border, something that McSally's been weak on. She's sponsored some legislation that would actually grant legal status to illegal aliens that come into the U.S. as minors. He's very much against any sort of legal status for undocumented or illegal aliens.
It's interesting. I know this week she did a photo op with President Trump at the border wall in Yuma, and it's interesting because the border wall was fought on so many fronts, and now that they've completed their 200th mile, you really aren't hearing anything anymore about it because most importantly, it's working,
Mm-hmm.
and B, 200 miles, so it's come a long way, and there's not much they can stop a train from going now. But I thought it was kind of ironic that she was there actually signing her name on the border wall along with Trump and everything. And Trump deserves that, but not her, because she has fought it in different areas. And I'm glad to see a candidate that wants to secure our border.
Definitely.
So what other challenges would he be facing, though? I mean, I know right now many people just feel like, well, McSally's just the person. I guess we have to vote for her. What kind of challenges is he facing, and what can we do? I mean,
Yeah.
people who are interested in him, and I want to meet him. Can he come on?
Definitely, we'll get him on.
Great.
We'll check the schedule and we'll figure that out. So what can we do? Get the word out there. Obviously, with the primary ballots going out on the 8th for the mail-in, we need to make sure that people know his name before that and what he stands for.
Time is of the essence.
So time is of the essence. Tell your family and friends, coworkers, everyone you know, who he is, what he's about. Go to demanddaniel.com. That's his website. That'll have all of his information there. Secondly, as far as why he's doing this, he's a successful entrepreneur and businessman. He and his wife have started a couple companies. One of them being a real estate company with roughly 800 agents. They did about $1 billion in sales last year, which is really good for a local real estate company.
Sounds a lot like Trump.
Real estate guy, right?
Hands-on experience instead of being a career politician.
Very important.
Yeah, he wasn't handed anything. He's had to build it from the ground up. They've got another company that it's an import-export company that's been very successful for them as well. He's not doing this for the money. He's already stated on the record that he won't take the salary in the Senate.
Just like Trump.
Or the pension. So yeah, just like Trump. There are a lot of parallels, which is interesting. And, one of the challenge, you said, what are some of the challenges? People bring up the fact that Trump has not endorsed him and that he endorsed McSally instead. Well, he did that actually before. Trump endorsed McSally prior to him entering the primary. And not to mention, Trump has endorsed Mitt Romney, John McCain, Paul Ryan. So
a great crew.
Sometimes Trump's had to make certain endorsements based on certain alignments he's had. So an endorsement isn't always set in stone. And not to mention, Christy, you brought up the gentleman in North Carolina that just won in the Republican primary. Similar type profile to Daniel. In fact, he's a constitutionalist. He's actually a real estate guy. And he beat out the establishment incumbent in the primary that Trump had endorsed. So we're seeing this theme spread where these are the anti-establishment candidates. Even if they don't have the endorsement, they are winning. And they're doing it for the right reasons, and they're doing it because the people recognize a need for change.
And I think you bring up a good point, specifically with Daniel, that he entered the race after the endorsement had already been made. But I think a lot of people that are winning in the primaries are actually a better thing for Trump. I think sometimes he wants to safely endorse the person that supports him verbally, but not necessarily the whole agenda. But these people that are up and coming are actually stronger supporters for Trump.
They'll be the fighters.
Yeah,
you're right. These are the
people
fighters.
That are going to help him.
They'll be his biggest allies when they get to the Senate or Congress. That's one of the things Daniel said is, he'll stand there and filibuster on the floor. The Senate seat, for people that don't know, is a very important seat. They can do something, and Daniel talks a lot about this. When you have him back on, he'll talk about this. They can do something that no other position can, which is they can disrupt. So you talked early on about disruption, which is what Trump did. He disrupted the status quo. That's what Daniel wants to do in the Senate. He wants to go in there and roadblock. He wants to sit there and stop the status quo. He wants to disrupt what's going on, all of the corruption, and he can stand there on the Senate floor and filibuster and talk as long as he's able to physically stand. And he said, I'll do that day after day after day, as long as it takes to where the people understand what's actually taking place.
It's interesting. I definitely want to make it very clear that I am a strong supporter of our troops, and I value anybody who has served and helped spread freedom and save our lives. But I get tired of people like McCain and McSally. That's all that they're voting on is I did our country. I did a service for it. I fought in Iraq, and you should vote me in. But where is your voting record?
Mm-hmm.
And same thing. I'm hearing it on Mark Kelly's side. I saw a commercial for him, and he was talking about. I commanded the 2 space shuttle missions. I flew and I saved lives, and and I'm like, really? It's just like anybody else in America. We all have an important job.
Yeah.
And even though the space shuttle is impressive, your job as a space shuttle commander was no different than a flight pilot, for Southwest.
Sure.
So
How does that qualify you to be in the Senate?
Exactly.
You can have 2 thoughts at once. You can say you did a wonderful job at that and thank you for your service,
Yes.
but you don't want that person to be there, voting on your behalf. And the Senate is so important. I always say to some of the women I know and the moms I know who don't think they really care much about politics, one of the reasons why I like to discuss things is so they realize how it does affect them. This Senate seat is so crucially important. We cannot afford to lose another Senate seat. And we've had some other foolish things. Like Jeff Sessions was a terrible choice for Attorney General, and then then we lost that Senate seat. We're eking away, losing Senate seats, and all it takes is a slight one extra Senate seat in our Senate for them to be able to impeach Trump. That's why he avoided impeachment, because a few senators, just a few. I mean, it's really scary. And the Democrats are always lockstep, and then we always get a couple of Republicans who waffle. So we cannot afford.
It's true.
It's crucial that we get this seat.
I was just gonna say, if they do take over, if the Democrats somehow got control of the Senate, they're gonna enact the nuclear option. They'll go to a 51 vote majority versus the 60 needed right now.
Yeah.
It would be a very, very bad situation even if Trump got reelected and they took the House and the Senate. It's likely that he would be impeached. It is likely they would start that up the day after the election.
They sure would. Haven't forgotten about it. It's unbelievable.
No, they'll find something else.
So I'm really a believer in your candidate, and I'm excited that you came here today to tell us a lot more about it. You opened up my eyes even more. I think it's more important to get him in there rather than McSally. Can you touch a little bit on if he is up against Mark Kelly? There's some obvious contrasts there, but what is a strong point that he can hit Mark Kelly on that would show Arizonans how he is the perfect choice for Senate?
So that's a great question. Daniel's chomping at the bit to go up against Mark Kelly. He 100% believes that he will beat him in the general election. A couple of the main issues that he's going to hit him hard on, they're just low-hanging fruit. It's number 1, guns, and number 2, China. These are just very easy issues to take Mark Kelly down on. Number 1, guns. Mark Kelly actually tried to complete a straw purchase of a AR-15. A lot of people don't know this. It's out there on the internet. So he could have gotten in a lot of trouble. He committed a felony technically. Now, of course, they didn't go after him for it. He was trying to prove a point. In the process of proving a point, committed a felony. He was trying to prove how easy it was to get a gun. Not so easy, because they turned him away.
Which is great.
It shows that the system actually works, whereas a lot of the left wants to say that it's really easy to get a gun. It's really not. Number 2, obviously the China issue. Tencent, which is a Chinese investment arm of essentially the Chinese Communist Party, is a heavy investor in Mark Kelly's company. So I'm not sure how much they've invested. It's a large dollar amount. It's in the millions, tens of millions. Tencent is an investment arm of the Chinese Communist Party, and what they do is they come to America, invest in our companies, and then they steal our intellectual property. And that's just something that's glaringly obvious with Mark Kelly.
I definitely saw a news clip of Mark Kelly waving around the communist flag as he enters the stage to speak to some group over while his visit
I didn't
was
see
in
that.
China.
Oh,
wow.
And
Please get that to me.
It's actually been featured in Martha McSally's ad too. So that's something to pick up on, because it's kind of like Obama bowing to different dignitaries around the world. When you're an equal, you're not to bow to another person. So it's kind of the same thing, surrendering the flag, it really tells me that he's no different than Hunter Biden, getting Chinese preference.
Yeah.
Talk about Chinese privilege.
As we approach the 4th of July, I think we need to remember to be proud of our country, to fight for our country. We are exceptional. We are better. And this whole apologizing for America, oh, America has so much to feel sorry about and to be ashamed of.
Yeah.
I reject that wholeheartedly.
Same.
And I think that's what so many Americans feel the same way as we do. And I think that we need to celebrate that on the 4th of July and really think about this fall is so crucial. What's going to be happening.
So this, as we head out, I'd like to say, please like, share, and subscribe our content. If you're on YouTube, don't forget to hit the bell, but you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, of course, our site, americaagainsthollywood.com. I might be forgetting some other platforms. Facebook is an important one. But definitely share our content with as many people as you can. Get the voice out. We need to spread the word and help people see the true light. I'm Dave at Dave's Happy Hour, a big part of AmericaAgainstHollywood.com, and I'm my co-host.
Yes, I'm Christy Orders with Clearing the Smoke, also on AmericaAgainstHollywood.com. And I want to say thank you so much, Steve, for being here today. This is so important. And I'm excited to know we have a much better option out there. It's one of the most inspiring things I've heard in the last few depressing weeks we've had. So thank you so much. And we look forward to hearing to meeting Daniel and really getting the word out about him. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Christy. I appreciate it. We'll definitely have Daniel on. And if you have any questions for him that he can answer when he comes on, please email them to info@americaagainsthollywood.com. And if you have any questions for me, you can email me at steve@demanddaniel.com. And please visit demanddaniel.com if you want to get more information about the candidate.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And happy 4th of July, everyone. And God bless America.
Happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th of July.